I'm Al Wakefield. Live in Mendon, Vermont. Been in Vermont now about 30 years or so. And as I think about the last 250 years, a part of which I've lived in and seem to continue to live, born in 1938, and so saw World War II, obviously the end of it. But there's certain things I think that kind of stick out in my mind following that. And one, having grown up in Harlem, New York, and Columbia, South Carolina, one was the, I think, 1994 Supreme Court decision on segregation, desegregating schools and public facilities, and that had a big impact. I was in an all-black school and kind of wondering, in fact, whether tomorrow I'd be in an all-white school, which, you know, growing up in South Carolina and Harlem was a frightening prospect. But that had a big impact. Certainly on the way I think about this country, which I view with mixed emotions, having viewed a lot of its failures and now, you know, some successes, but the failures are still obvious and reoccurring every day. I think the second thing that hit me as a black man, particularly growing up in this country, was 1986, 87, when President Obama was elected, and that made all the stuff that we learned, we heard about with Brown versus Ferguson and the Civil Rights Act of 68 and the Voting Act of 69, whatever those were, made all those really real to me, that a black man could be elected in this country. And the third thing, which really is still bothering me because it's still occurring in residual ways and in very real ways, were the January 6th riots in Washington and the attack on the Capitol and the obvious intent of the former president and some of his supporters to take over the government. And what's happening right now with respect to trying to diminish the Voting Act rather of the late 60s, and all that's occurred in terms of advancement, not only for marginalized people, but for people all across the country. And that's all frightening. And so, as I said, I view where we are right now with mixed emotions. I, in fact, would not be sitting here talking to you about any of this were things as they were, you know, 50 to 70 years ago in this country. And so, obviously, there's been some advancement, and I personally have received the benefit of that, having served in the military, flying planes. But one thing that comes to mind is the march, Montgomery, Alabama, Martin Luther King, in 67, 68, whenever it was. And I was in the military and had just made captain, flying B-52s, protecting the world for democracy, as we said. And came through Selma, Alabama a week after the march across the Pettus Avenue Bridge, and in fact was stoned, shot at, chased, if I had really run very fast or driven very fast, out of town, seeking refuge at the local Air Force base. And so, you know, those kind of personal experiences, along with what's happening in a much larger environment, make me have mixed emotions about where we are, but generally optimistic, although very frightened about where we go from here. But thanks for allowing me the opportunity to comment. I appreciate it.